Morning, Melissa.
Always good to talk to Mark. He's also the author of a book I highly recommend, Lassoing the Sun, A Year in America's National Parks. Pick it up today. So, as you write, Mark, not only are we seeing trash piling up on curbs and no recycling, our main library has been closed for more than 2 months because it's become a monoclonal antibody center. Once again, we have algae blooms in the St. Johns River. And the downtown riverfront is in suspended animation, as it has been for years and years, with ambitious plans being presented. But we've seen so many renderings and ambitious plans come and go. There's a weary cynicism about whether they'll ever come to reality. And then last but not least, there's anger because the city has agreed to spend hundreds of millions on a Four Seasons development on the waterfront. But we can't afford about $1.5 million a year to run residential recycling. There's a lot of discontent out there.
Yeah, right. I was just struck by kind of all of this combined together, and it felt, like I said, kind of dystopian. I think you planted that seed maybe a few months ago when you were describing the scene outside your offices there with the ramps down and the rubble and kind of. These days, I feel like we kind of had this, I don't know, Mad Max meets Contagion vibe going around.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. But I also kind of tried to spin that into, I'm probably more hopeful and optimistic right now about our riverfront than I have been in quite a while. I kind of teeter-totter back and forth between optimism and pessimism. So.
Let us know your thoughts, everybody. 549-2937. Yeah, I mean, it is important to be optimistic and hope for the best, but there have been so many broken promises and so many bad decisions that have been made for so long that it's easy to become cynical about the future of this city. And I think the delays in waste hauling are sort of a visual reminder of that for many people. It's crystallized for people that our local government is currently unable, due to the pandemic mainly, to provide basic services.
Right. Yeah. No, it is frustrating, and I know there's other cities. I mean, I think the New York Times pointed out in their story where it's not just us, but there are a lot of cities that aren't having problems with their trash. I think it's important to point that out. And then when you juxtapose that, with the that we just approved, $100 million in taxpayer dollars to go to a luxury hotel. I think that angers people. And kind of the point of what I wrote is we've found ways to invest in, a Four Seasons luxury hotel. A lot of our council people were ready to spend more than $200 million on Lot J, a development, off the river. I'd like to see us finally invest in, the public land downtown, the parks downtown, kind of the idea, which comes first, the public land or the private development. You really need both to make the riverfront work, but I think we often neglect the public part of that equation. And I think there is a lot of momentum right now that we'll hopefully use to not just focus on the private development, but to finally make, we truly could have one of the most beautiful riverfronts in all of the country.
Sure. 549-2937. Now, the city was given credit in the New York Times, along with Mayor Lenny Curry, for paying employees from the parks, public works, and fire departments nearly $100,000 in overtime to take extra shifts driving garbage trucks. The private waste hauling contractors the city has hired have lost out on nearly $1 million in payments for failing to complete their routes. The city hired a new contractor to replace one of them. It's still not enough, though. And you know what else struck me, Mark, is the owner of one of the private waste hauling companies in Jacksonville that's caught up in all of this was quoted in the New York Times as saying it's all the fault of child tax credit money and unemployment checks that has distorted the labor market, in his words, that people would rather sit home than work, even though studies show that's not true. uh, that if you pay people more to do this difficult, unpleasant job, they'll do it. What are your thoughts?
Right. Yeah, that quote jumped out at me too. And then the New York Times did cite the studies that say that people keep saying that, but that isn't. In fact, the evidence doesn't show that to be true. And yeah, it is a low-paying job. It illustrated, how you could go and work for quite a, FedEx or Amazon or some of these other companies and make quite a bit more. And it did, I think we take our people who pick up our trash for granted. It is. I had a friend who used to always leave things out for her trash guys, and really truly appreciated them. And I think this is a reminder that we shouldn't take them for granted, and they should be able to make a good living wage doing what they're doing.
Let us know your thoughts, everyone. A conversation with Mark Woods of the Times-Union and the author of Lassoing the Sun, A Year in America's National Parks. 549-2937. We do have some beautiful parks around town, but of course, as we're talking about, trash piling up is marring the beauty of this community. 549-2937. Lisa in Nocatee. Hi, Lisa. Good morning. Go ahead, Lisa.
Good morning. I was calling because I was living in Bartram Park, and we used to joke that we had the trash lottery because for over 5 years, it has been we never know if they were coming or not, whether it was trash, garbage, or recycle. Bulk was like a real mystery on when that would be picked up. This has been going on for 5 years since we went on city trash, and it hadn't gotten any better. COVID, now this like an excuse for them to get rid of part of it. I think it's privatization. They don't have an obligation to us the way the city government does. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Mark.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, a lot of these, you do hear that often. That so the idea that this is purely because of the pandemic is flawed. And I think we have, I forget what it is, 5 different contracts or however many different companies doing this. And, in theory, consolidated government was going to make us this efficient entity, and you would think that efficiency would be illustrated in trash pickup. But you hear more and more of these stories now that exactly like that they've been having issues for a long time. So
this whole pandemic has laid bare the flaws in the worldview that privatizing and outsourcing government services is always the best way to go. It works great until it doesn't.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. 549-2937. Larry on the west side. Hi, Larry.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
Regarding the guys that pick up the trash, I think you could find there's a lot of people in Jacksonville that would do that work. And you probably ought to pay them a little more. But what's happening right now, the trash piling up, and all that, I think it's the result of privatization across the board. You can look at not only trash pickup, but other, you can look in other areas of occupation. Everybody want to rush to privatize everything, and they should let the city of Jacksonville do that and employ those people through the city. That's what I think it is.
Thank you, Larry. Mark, it strikes me as we're talking about this. When Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, as I recall, he was there to organize the garbage workers in Tennessee. He was there to try to get them better working conditions, better pay, just better treatment. Okay. And before he was assassinated, he said the next big work that he was trying to do was the economic piece, that they had made some progress on racial equality, not enough, but some, but that the next big challenge was the economic inequality in America and the poor conditions for many workers. So here we are a generation or two later, and we haven't made a lot of progress. The conditions aren't so great, so much so that in the pandemic, we can't even get people to do the jobs. Here's a tweet from Darren. Is it more accurate to say that a significant portion of our residents have been experiencing dystopia every day in Jacksonville for decades, and it's now reached the leafy neighborhoods as well? So, Mark, now that these problems are emanating out from older city neighborhoods to more white, middle-class suburban neighborhoods, it's sinking into people that the decisions we make about government matter. Getting involved civically matters. That people have been dealing with indignities and poor services for a long time in this city, but now it's only affecting a wider population, so more people seem now to be aware of it.
Yeah, I think that's probably is a valid point, and I think what you said before that about MLK also is interesting. I mean, we could, and on that point, you could go back even farther to Jacksonville's A. Philip Randolph and the Pullman Porters. I mean, a huge part of his mission was economic equality. So yeah, there's a lot here, and then privatization. That takes us back to the idea of JEA that we talked about. Would JEA be better run as a private utility company? And the public pretty much overwhelmingly said no. We want to keep JEA as this public entity. So that is an interesting what you said earlier about private versus public. It's great until it doesn't work.
And to be clear, the city hasn't fully privatized all of these services. That they do. Correct. Like a lot of cities, they do a mix of things. It's not as though we're unusual. A lot of cities handle it this way. Lots of tweets. Lee tweets the show. The city is on the hook for this garbage fiasco. As we enter election season, this could be council members' Armageddon. Well, we'll see, Lee. We will see if this carries over into the next campaigns. Robin tweets the show, pay people what they're worth. Susan tweets the show, I wish the city council had held the $100 million gift to Shad Khan hostage until plans for a riverfront park were complete. Lisa tweets the show, my property taxes are fairly high and I'm wondering what I'm paying for these days. Robert tweets the show, what about our beautiful downtown library? When do we get that back? Another listener, the mayor's office has no problem with investing in football. I've heard the largest outdoor cocktail party will cost us big this year, but we've stopped recycling. Rayla tweets the show, the recycling in my neighborhood sat close to 4 weeks without notice. We went 2 weeks without trash pickup. The neighborhood smelled and looked horrible. We never know when they are coming to pick up our trash. Here's one more tweet. We have to build a bridge to success for everyone to cross over in this city. Okay. Lots of calls for Mark Woods of the Times-Union, lots of emails and tweets. There is a lot of discussion about this. We'll get to your emails in a moment. Don at the Beaches. Hi, Don.
Hi, good morning. And Mark, I'll be one of the first to purchase your book. I've always enjoyed your columns. I've always enjoyed your comments.
Thank you.
I'm retired as a public works director and at Atlantic Beach, and we contract our own recycling. So our services are still fine. We probably don't get the same deal that Jacksonville gets with recycling. We have to pay a little more, but our recycling is still getting picked up on time. Our garbage is still getting picked up on time. Life is good.
Yeah, Don, thanks for that. The mayor of Jacksonville Beach called into the show a few weeks ago, Mark, to point that out, that they're managing this. Of course, they are a smaller municipality, so it's a little bit different situation, but still.
Yeah, I've talked to people at the beach that say exactly that they haven't, if it's the pandemic, they haven't noticed any issues at all in the last year and a half. So, yeah, I'm not sure what to make of that, but that is interesting.
Steve is downtown. Hi, Steve. Good morning. Hi, Steve. You're on the air.
Yeah, good morning.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I drive a truck for one of the local companies here picking up garbage. And I just want to make a comment about some of the areas you go around town, you would not even be able to recognize that garbage doesn't get picked up on a regular basis. Is there's garbage that's continually sitting around for months on some of these neighborhoods where people drag furniture from their house and lay it on the side of the road, and it sits there for months with nobody doing anything about it. And that never gets addressed at all. I mean, you're addressing an issue where people live in a normal place where they put their trash out on the curb and we come by and pick it up. But you got places where that just does not happen. You got people living in this city that've been living this way for years, where it's just full of trash. I don't know how you distinguish some of these neighborhoods. What's trash supposed to be picked up and what's been sitting there for years.
Yeah, Steve, thanks for that. No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And, Mark Woods, as the New York Times pointed out, we are Florida's largest city, technically speaking. Although, cities like Miami and Orlando and Tampa have bigger population, when you look at city limits, we're the largest because we have the consolidated city-county government. We're one of the biggest cities by land mass in the United States, if not the biggest. Picking up trash, even in ideal situations, ideal conditions, is never easy for a city that's as sprawling and far-flung as Jacksonville. And he's right. There are so many neighborhoods. It's a huge place. So we do have to give credit to the city officials. They have been dealt a bad hand here, and this has been a problem for a long time. It's only now, though, that it's become so acute that everybody's noticing.
Yeah, to the caller's point, there are places that blight was a big topic a few years ago. That what do we do about trying to change that? So that was not necessarily trash pickup, but kind of the what he was talking about. And to your point about the size of Jacksonville, yes, it's kind of part of its beauty and part of its hurdles that we have. It's still the largest by landmass city in the lower 48. There's bigger ones in Alaska, but we're the largest. So the logistics of our city can be daunting. Miami would be a much smaller geographically and also population just for the city. So we are kind of this unique, but we keep talking about that, how we're going to leverage that and make that our strength. And I think there are times and ways when it is our strength, and there's also times and ways when it's one of our weaknesses.
Jim emails the show, the city's failure to provide basic services started before the pandemic. Look at the sad condition of our parks. Amy emails the show, I don't understand why they suspended recycling instead of yard waste. Treating yard waste would still decompose in a landfill versus bottles, cans, and paper. Could you talk about the logic of why they chose one or the other? Mark, the yard waste issue, that we've been hearing a lot about that as well. People love to landscape their lawns. Communities like to, especially ones with homeowners associations, like to make sure everything's well manicured. So the yard waste in lush Florida just keeps piling up.
Yeah, and I think the mayor was hearing a lot about that, and so he made that a priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that decompose? I don't. I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm sure some of it would eventually, but it doesn't look great. So people were frustrated that they put it out there. But yeah, the recycling, I think it is important. We talk about how it costs us money, and that may be true, but I think there's value in not just continually filling your landfill more and more and more. I tell the story about one of the parks I went to, one of the national parks I went to while working on the book was Gateway National Recreation Area in New York City, and they took me out to this beach that they call Bottle Beach, and they said you'll see why when you get there. And it was this beach just covered with old broken bottles, and a landfill had broken, and it was covered with this. It was, it was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
They said, sometimes we bring school groups out here. And I said, what? And they said, well, it's partly because it's an easy place to get water samples, but partly we want to tell the kids, when you throw something away, it doesn't just poof, magically disappear. And I think we sometimes think that we throw away something and it's gone. Well, it has to go somewhere, either a landfill, and there's value in recycling and us not just continuing creating more and more waste. Thinking of just back to the dystopia, you think of these future movies always have us often living just in piles of, waste. And, I don't, hopefully we're not headed there, but we should work hard to avoid that.
Absolutely. Here's a tweet from a listener. It's frustrating. We have the money, talent, labor, and creative problem solvers in this city who would love to tackle all of the problems facing us, but are so tied down by red tape and political division, it's hard to move the city forward. We will, though, she says. Rich on the South Side. Hi, Rich. How are you? Go ahead. Turn your radio down, Rich, and go ahead.
Rich on the South Side. Hi, Rich.
Go ahead,
yes,
Rich.
Ma'am, Miss Melissa, I just want to say this. One trash landfill is what Jacksonville got. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is also part of the mix of problems, Mark. One big landfill over on the west side for all of the city's waste.
Right. Yeah, that adds, I guess, to the logistics. You have to, haul it all the way over there and then come back to the route. So yeah, again, having a huge city and one big landfill over there.
With all of this said, we do need to recognize the issues, but still be positive. As you wrote in your column, the time to act is now. The Jesse Ball DuPont Fund has brought in some of the top thinkers in the world on placemaking and how to activate a downtown riverfront space like the one we have. They presented an ambitious plan. A developer named Steve Atkins has presented an ambitious plan for another section of the waterfront. Of course, we talked about Shad Khan's plans for his piece of it. And after years and years and years of inertia, there's hope that maybe finally we could see some forward motion. It's almost as though people are afraid to hope and be disappointed again.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's kind of the what I was trying to write about. And yeah, I do feel somewhat hopeful. I feel like there's more momentum. This is something we've been talking about, I've been writing about for 20 years, about let's really turn around the riverfront and have beautiful public spaces and parks and development and places to eat and drink. And I do feel like there's more momentum right now. People talking about parks, there's always been kind of a separate groups, and now, Riverfront Parks now was formed, joining a lot of groups together with that mission. And Jesse Ball DuPont Fund gets involved and has their clout and expertise. And I feel like there's a lot of people who are really pushing for this now. And so I want to be hopeful. We're showing that we're spending money downtown, but we're right now so far, it's a luxury hotel, which I'm not against that, but it has to be a piece of the equation. It can't just be, that's what I want to see next. I want to see us devote some more money to public spaces. I want to see, we have the plans for the landing, but will that come to fruition? Much of the attention focused on, the controversial artwork, but the Jackson Magazine made a good point illustrating, well, the bigger question isn't about the artwork. That debate is the money there, and when will this get done? So I want to see us legitimately spend money on these public spaces, and as the Jesse Ball DuPont Fund illustrated with their research, and we've said over and over again, money invested in public spaces, there's a big return on that. I don't have all the stats in front of me, but there's a zillion ways to illustrate how that has paid off in many different ways for many different cities.
Read more of Mark's thoughts in the Times-Union and pick up his book, Lassoing the Sun, A Year in America's National Parks. A great holiday gift for the nature lover, the park fan in your life. Mark, always good to talk to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Melissa.
And much more still ahead later. How to de-stress in these tense times with author Johanna Basford. Her book, 30 Days of Creativity, tells us how, but up next.
We were founded to ease the burden in healthcare between health plans and providers they serve. We do a lot of work in the digital transformation.
How a Jacksonville company is using digital technology to improve healthcare in this pandemic. We'll be right back. Well, digital technology is helping healthcare providers get through this pandemic using telehealth and other means. A Jacksonville-based company is part of this change. For more, I spoke with Availity Senior Vice President Jack Hunt. So, Jack, tell me a little bit about Availity's 20-year anniversary and the growth you're experiencing.
Well, Melissa, thank you for asking. Availity is a First Coast company founded 20 years ago by Florida Blue and Humana. And we were founded to ease the burden in healthcare between health plans and the providers they serve. So we do a lot of work in the digital transformation arena between those health plans and providers, removing manual labor, paper, and digitizing a lot of the processes that are there today.
And of course, healthcare during the pandemic we've all lived through has been disrupted. Can you tell us about how you've adapted to that and how you see the acceleration of these programs continuing as we come out of this time?
Sure. Well, what we're seeing is the continued acceleration of digital transformation within the healthcare marketplace. And one of the things that I think we all experienced, especially during the pandemic, is many of us weren't able to get to the doctor, or there were major concerns with leaving the house and going. So one of the major trends within that digital transformation is telehealth. In the telehealth marketplace, which grew well over 10x plus during the pandemic, and I believe will continue to grow over time. That allowed a lot of people who were needed consistent care during the pandemic to get it. It also provided a way, an efficient way for the market to provide. There was a lot of demand that COVID took away from the doctors and healthcare professionals, and telehealth provided a more efficient way of them spending their time with patients. There are some numbers where, in most cases it'd be, sort of 10 patients to one doctor, and in the case of using telehealth, you can get an additional 50% efficiency with that. So it allowed the healthcare marketplace to deal with a lot of the staffing shortages during the pandemic time.
Do you think those changes are permanent?
I think some of the behaviorals will go back, but I do think that many people who are adopting technology on a daily basis. Obviously, it's a little bit generational, but more and more folks expect more convenience within healthcare. The telehealth capabilities were, or the usage of telehealth was growing prior to the pandemic. The pandemic accelerated it. And I do believe that although that may have been a spike, that we will see that continued growth over time. I know that, for me, for instance, during the pandemic, my doctor's office, who's, a traditional practitioner, and I would normally go visit, turned temporarily into a telehealth provider to serve me. And certainly I appreciated that convenience. And others may choose to take advantage of that convenience going forward.
Another question I have for you. Medical records are such a mess. People go to all kinds of different healthcare providers. They move around. Unless you're really diligent about keeping records everywhere you go, it can be hard for records to sort of populate across different platforms, different companies. What do you think about how we could possibly do a better job of digitizing everyone's healthcare history and records so that we have a slightly less inefficient system?
Well, that is, I think you hit the nail on the head. That is one of the largest problems that we have within the healthcare system. And there's a tremendous amount of paper and overhead attributed to the fact that those records aren't as mobile as they should be. I believe that the market, the interoperability between EHR systems, electronic health record systems, is improving. I believe the federal government understands that is a huge gap that needs to be filled, and I believe that over time we'll see further mandates around that interoperability that we all expect, especially given how everything else is fully connected on the internet and sharing data in our personal lives. Given those trends, we certainly expect the consumerism trends of being able to do business online and the free movement of information to extend into healthcare.
Mm-hmm. Now, last but not least, you're hiring, right?
Yes, Availity is hiring. We continue to grow. We do our headquarters is in Jacksonville in Southside, and we want to continue to expand both within the First Coast and across the country where we can find talent. But we certainly prefer to expand on the First Coast if we can. So please look us up on our website, and we certainly welcome all the new talent that's moving into the Jacksonville area.
Thanks, Jack. He's Jack Hunt, Senior Vice President of Healthcare Network at Availity in Jacksonville. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Well, Halloween is this weekend. Maybe you're decorating your place with some spooky creatures like bats, for example. Bats often get a bad rap in the movies, but they are essential to a thriving ecosystem. We're going to talk about bats as we head up to Halloween with Dr. Shelley Johnson, a state specialized agent in natural resources at the University of Florida. She's on the line to clear up misconceptions about these nocturnal critters. Hi, Dr. Johnson.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. So what species of bats are found in Florida?
So there's actually over 1,400 species of bats found throughout the world, and they're on every continent except for Antarctica and every region except the Arctic. Across the U.S., we have 48 species, and here in Florida, we have 13 species. 2 of those are considered federally endangered, and one of which, the Florida bonneted bat, lives nowhere else but in the state of Florida.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that. What are the biggest misconceptions and unfounded fears about these animals?
So bats are definitely misunderstood, which can lead to them being fearful. And so there are several common myths which I would love to help clarify. Number one, bats are not blind. They have sight just like us, and when it's light out, they can see just perfectly fine, just like we can. But bats have evolved a really fascinating capacity to use echolocation in order to see in the dark. Basically, they can detect sound waves that are bouncing off objects to create sort of a mental image of their surroundings, which allows them to navigate even in complete darkness. Another myth is that bats get tangled in your hair. Bats do not get tangled in your hair. Because of their capacity to echolocate and because they are really very adept flyers, bats are actually extremely capable of flying around in very tight spaces. So if you do have bats flying around kind of near your head, it's probably because you are attracting insects that the bat is trying to eat. So I promise you they want nothing to do with your hair. One of the third misconceptions is that most bats have rabies, and that is not true. Most bats do not have rabies. So in a wild bat population, less than half of 1% of bats carry the rabies virus. A rabbit bat also becomes progressively lethargic, so you're actually very unlikely to even encounter a rabbit bat because they're not out flying around. And so bats just being around do not possess any real health threat to humans.
That's important because it's important people understand that because bats are an important part of the ecosystem. They control pests, they pollinate plants. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, bats are extremely important in the ecosystems that they live in. So there are a lot of bats that are important pollinators in tropical and desert areas. And most of the bats that live here in the U.S. and all of our bats that live in Florida are insectivores. So meaning their diet primarily consists of things like moths, beetles, and mosquitoes. So, in fact, bats are the only major predator of night-flying insects, so they're doing us a huge favor. Each bat can forage for several hours each night. They can each eat up to 150 insects every 10 minutes, so that's a lot of insects. It's actually been estimated that bats can save industry up to $20 billion per year across the U.S. by eating the types of pests that destroy agriculture and forest crops.
So we need more bats.
Yes, bats are fantastic. They're reducing the pests. They're reducing our need to use pesticides. They're preventing the negative effects of pesticides have on the environment. They're beneficial for us all the way around.
So what should people do then if they literally have bats in their belfry, if they discover bats in their attic or what have you? What should they do?
Yeah, so if you find a bat inside of a house, first of all, like actually in your living space with you, usually this is just a single bat. If you are unsure if it's come in contact with a person, sometimes, if you have very young children, someone that can't tell you for sure if they've been bitten or not, then it is prudent to call your local health department and probably get that bat tested. But for the most part, if no one came in direct contact with that bat, it's best to just try and help them get out of the house. So often we can just open up the space, open up the doors and windows, and they'll fly out on their own. If the bat is on the floor, bats actually have a very hard time flying from the ground. So they typically need a little help. So you can get them on the end of a bristly broom, in a trash can. Just take that outside, lay it next to a tree, leave it there until dark, and they'll probably fly away on their own. Now, if you have bats living in the roof or the attic space of your house, this isn't necessarily a problem, especially if it's a small number and they're not inside your living space. But if they are causing a problem and you want to encourage them to move out, best thing is to contact a wildlife exclusion professional to help encourage them to find a new home. And basically what we do is seal up most of the openings in the area, so there's only a few entrances left, and then install one-way valves so that the bats can exit, but they're not able to re-enter.
All right. And how can people help bats? How can they be part of, there's actually an effort to make sure the bat population stays robust?
So one of the biggest threats to bats here in Florida is definitely their loss of habitat, primarily due to human development and us changing the land use. And so a roost is one of the most critical components of their habitat. This is where the bats spend their day resting. It's where they raise their pups. And different types of roosts that bats use here in Florida include foliage, such as dead trees, palm fronds, Spanish moss, and they also roost in things like crevices and caves, rocks, and also structures such as buildings and under bridges. So in addition to helping conserve that natural habitat, it's also a nice thing. You might want to try building a small bat house for some bats to live on your property. And it is important to make sure your bat house is following specific characteristics. The bats are pretty picky about the right temperature, the right space, making sure it's in the right location. So you can't, not just any house will do.
They're high maintenance then. That's interesting. Well, this is fascinating. And thank you for sharing your insights with us, your expertise. She's Dr. Shelley Johnson, a state specialized agent in natural resources at the University of Florida. Happy Halloween, Doctor.
Thank you.
All right, a quick break. And in a moment, National Stress Awareness Day is coming up next week. How are you managing your stress? We'll speak with the author of 30 Days of Creativity and how you can pick up her book and discover your creative self and your inner child, too. It's all just ahead. You're listening to First Coast Connect on 89.9. We'll be right back.
AEG presents Bon Iver, performing at the St. Augustine Amphitheater. Show date is April 14th, 2022. Bon Iver 2022 at the Amp. Tickets available at Ticketmaster.com. Teach returns on Saturday, November 13th at the Hyatt Regency Jacksonville. Visit wjct.org/teach for additional details and to get your tickets now.
What's Jacksonville Today?
Jacksonville Today is growing.
Chaotic.
Creative. Jacksonville Today is hopeful.
Get the Jacksonville Today newsletter with the top local stories of the day, plus exclusive columns, a heads up on getting involved in local decision making, and the best of what's weird and wonderful in Northeast Florida. The Jacksonville Today newsletter. Sign up now at jaxtoday.org. That's jaxtoday.org.
On the next Fresh Air, Katie Couric. After anchoring NBC's Today Show for 15 years, first with Brian Gumbel, then Matt Lauer, she moved to CBS, where she was the first woman to be the solo anchor of a network evening news show. She's written a new memoir. I hope you'll join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9. Earlonne Woods and Nigel Poor started the podcast Ear Hustle when Woods was a prisoner in San Quentin. It won fans and prizes and helped Earlonne earn his freedom when his sentence was commuted in 2018. We'll speak to the pair about their latest chapter and ask how they've used honesty and humor to change America's view of prison life. That's next time on 1A. Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Well, National Stress Management Day is coming up next week, and adult coloring books have become a popular stress management tool for millions of Americans. The queen of coloring, author Johanna Basford, knows this, and she's at it again with a new addition to her collection of trend-setting coloring books. It's called 30 Days of Creativity. Draw, color, and discover your creative self. I spoke with Basford about this and her 30-day challenge. Take a listen. Johanna Basford, good to talk to you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
And it's great timing as we talk about 30 Days of Creativity. This is a beautiful book, and I think it's one that people will really enjoy and find therapeutic, which we all need right now, don't you think?
Yeah, this book was designed to help people discover a new healthy habit, that of creativity, because I think it is just the perfect way to unplug from the busy, busy world, to take some digital detox time, a spa break for the brain and the soul. It's an easy way to relax at the end of a super busy day and to give yourself time to decompress, which is what we all need just now, a bit of TLC.
Now, what is it about not only adult coloring books, but also some of the other pages and advice that you have in this new book that is so good for our brains and so good for helping us manage stress? There's real science behind this, isn't there?
Well, this book is actually a combination of things. So there's some pages to color. There are some really easy step-by-step drawing tutorials, because I know people get a little bit scared at the thought of drawing. And also some simple pages to doodle to complete the artwork, like inky daydreams, I guess. The idea was that I wanted to make lots of different ways for you to be creative. So you don't need to sit down and do the same task every day. You just pick a page that sparks joy. The pages aren't numbered. So for your 30 days, you can pick any page that you want each day. And you don't even have to complete the page. It's just 10 minutes a day that you have to complete. The idea is that you take some time out from being on your phone, from being listening to the ping of an email and the constant barrage of rolling news. You need a little bit of time where you can just be in flow and to focus on one simple analog task. And creativity is just perfect for that. It allows you to sink into this glorious bubble where the rest of the world just fades away and you are just focused on this very simple task of flooding a page with color or bringing something to life or drawing a little ice cream cone, all things that are just really happy and full of spirit and joy, and that will allow you to do some deep thinking and percolating and all those good things, processing of big thoughts while you're actually being creative.
And it's key to, just as you said, go analog. Get there with the paper and the pencils, colored pencils or crayons, and put the screens away. That's key, right?
Yeah, I just don't think you can be creative or focused on anything when you have a screen around you, whether that's a TV, an iPad, a computer, or a phone. There are just too many interruptions, too many things to distract you. And to get in flow, to have that lovely feeling where the rest of the world just melts away, you really need to be focused. So put it away for just 10 minutes. You'll find it's easier to be creative without all those distractions. It's also better for you because you're not going to be comparing yourself to anything. I think we all have a tendency, if we're working on something, to go online and look at what other people are doing. And that can be a really quick way to just intimidate yourself into stalling. And we want inspiration, not intimidation. So not looking at a person who is on day 5,000 of their creative journey and you're on day 2. Don't look at their work. It's your work, your journey, and it's your creative practice. It's not about perfection. It's just about practicing, getting a little better every day.
Now, it takes time to get a new healthy habit established. I've heard it's a minimum of maybe 21 days. You're saying a lot, 10 minutes of each day for 30 days to make the habit stick. Is that a realistic time frame, do you think, for most people?
Well, I did a deep dive into all this habit science stuff, and I've discovered that the actual amount of time that it takes to adopt a habit is completely unknown. Everyone is in disagreement with it.
Oh, really?
What
Okay.
I decided to do was to pick a time and a time span. So 10 minutes is achievable. Everyone can find 10 minutes a day. You probably spend more than 10 minutes a day scrolling on Instagram. And 30 days just felt like a nice little chunk of time. It's a month. We can all do something for 10 minutes a day for a month. we don't need any more difficult things in our life. Life is hard enough. We've got enough difficulties and things that we have to do. So this had to be something that was achievable and that you would get all those feel-good vibes from doing the thing. There's a wee habit tracker at the front of the book with 30 circles, all numbered, 1 to 30. Every day that you complete your 10 minutes, you colour in one of those circles and you'll slowly start to see the chain build. And all you have to do is to keep that chain growing. That incentivizes you to keep going. And I just feel that a 10-minute practice for 30 days is something that we can all do. And that's your anchor. That's the seeds that will start to grow, and then you'll be able to flourish your creative practice from there.
It's a beautiful book, and it would make a great gift, too. Check it out, everyone. 30 Days of Creativity, Draw, Color, and Discover Your Creative Self by Johanna Basford. Watch your stress melt away when you unleash your inner creative. It's such a great activity. I've been doing it myself, and I really recommend this. Thank you so much, Johanna, for the beautiful book.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening. I'm Melissa Ross. We'll be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Have a great day. Be safe and de-stress in whatever way suits you best.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect with Melissa Ross. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or BaptistJax.com.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Law Firm.
I'm Wayne Hogan. The Move Over Law protects police, fire, EMS, utility, and sanitation personnel by requiring drivers to move over and slow down for their vehicles.
Learn more at waynehogan.law.
WinGuard Marketing and Communications Agency, serving Jacksonville businesses and nonprofits since 2008. Services include branding, media buying, advertising, public relations, and digital marketing. More information can be found at wearewinguard.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
America has its own struggles with Facebook, but what happens when you bring Mark Zuckerberg's digital Wild West to countries his company doesn't understand? From WAMU and NPR in Washington, this is 1A. Hi, I'm Jonquilyn Hill in for Jen White. TikTok, YouTube, and Snapchat are before Congress today. Goal 1, to convince lawmakers they're not behaving in ways similar to Facebook. Its chief is complaining about a raft of critical articles published in recent days. They raise serious questions about how the social media giant operates in other countries, and what happens to content when your employees don't speak the local language. We'll get into that, and later we'll meet the two driving forces behind Ear Hustle, a podcast and now a book that's changing the conversation over mass incarceration. That's ahead after these news headlines.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Congressional Democrats are reportedly close to finalizing details of President Biden's domestic spending proposal. Progressives and moderates have spent weeks negotiating the cost and size of it. One key moderate is West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports he could address the spending proposal today in a speech at the Economic Club in Washington.
After meeting with President Biden and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer over the weekend, Senator Manchin now appears to be on board with proposals for new taxes on billionaires and certain corporations to help pay for the spending package. Moderate Democrats and a more left-leaning faction of the party have been deadlocked for weeks on a number of provisions. The president's proposal to offer free community college is not expected to make it into the bill, and the child tax credit is likely likely to be scaled back. Lawmakers have been working to reduce the overall cost of the measure from $3.5 trillion to around $2 trillion. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
Top executives from social media companies YouTube, Snapchat, and TikTok are scheduled to appear soon on Capitol Hill. They haven't faced questions from lawmakers like officials from Facebook and Twitter have gotten. Lawmakers are especially interested in how children use these social media platforms and what data is gathered from kids. Stocks opened higher this morning after two of the major indexes hit record highs on Monday. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose more than 80 points in early trading.
Strong corporate profits are giving a lift to stocks, with both the Dow and the S&P 500 index climbing to new highs yesterday. News that Hertz plans to buy 100,000 electric cars pushed Tesla's market valuation above the $1 trillion mark. Moderna shares also gained ground on hopes that its COVID-19 vaccine could soon be approved for younger children. Sony is set to report earnings later this week, and investors expect a lift from video gaming. That helped boost Japan's Nikkei average overnight. Stocks in South Korea were also higher, while indexes in Hong Kong and Shanghai fell. U.S. crude oil prices are close to $84 a barrel. AAA says the average price of regular gasoline is now up to $3.39 a gallon. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
A Japanese princess has married a commoner in a wedding that has been marred by controversy. NPR's Anthony Kuhn reports that dispute has drawn attention to the role of women in Japan's imperial family.
The controversy delayed the marriage of Princess Mako and Kei Komuro by 3 years. The pair decided to forego a formal ceremony and just registered the marriage at a government office. The controversy centers on a financial dispute involving Komuro's family. By law, Mako must